Hey all, welcome back to Anthropology 111. It's me, Dr. Edwards, here to help you out with Module 4, Modes of Production, Economics and Society. Yeah, I might geek out here, so bear with me. I get really excited about economic anthropology because, how to put this, economics from an anthropological perspective isn't just about money, right, or finances. It's about all the different ways you can make a living, right? And that's an incredible vast spectrum of ways. Okay, um, we do tend to see some primary patterns though, and it's important to be able to kind of point these out. But I want to stress that you need to think about it as kind of a spectrum because you tend never to find a group that just practices strictly one. They tend to be, a little overlap. All right, you're not going to have the perfect, you know, alignment. Um, And this is a really important thing to note. So we may have these ideal patterns that we've identified. However, in any particular group, you will tend to see some slight variation, right? So always keep that in mind. Um, we tend to talk in general, but there always tends to be exceptions to the rule and stuff. But that's kind of the point, to take the time to point those things out. The devil's in the details, as they say. So our five primary subsistence patterns, ways that people make a living, is we got foraging, we got pastoralism, horticulture, agriculture, and industrialization. Now, I'll take a minute or two for each of these to give you a little insight and point out things that you should check. Foraging, often called hunter-gatherers. Now, there's all this debate about people that say that the hunting is more important than the gathering. Don't go there. It's really not productive, to put it mildly. Um, they're both. This is really important because we tend to project that hunting is more important than gathering, but that tends to be a Western projection, right? We're taking certain Western values and projecting them onto other groups. Because if you talk to modern foragers, like the Dove-Juhuanzi, this is a group that I highlight in the written portion, give you some articles about them. If you speak to them, they have a unique, their own culturally defined division of labor, and that is male and female roles in their subsistence system. Excuse me, got a dry throat. Um, yeah, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that one is not more important than the other. That hunting is not more important than gathering, nor is gathering more important than hunting. They are mutually contributing. All right, these are men and women. Keep discussions of gender separate from this for the time being. Right, we'll get there. um, but these gender roles, these divisions of labor, are culturally defined, and they have to be supported by the group. Okay, so it's not right for us to project our Western values onto it. Okay, that's kind of a finer detail of cultural relativity. So yeah, foraging groups, hunter-gatherers, they tend to be egalitarian. You can't have individuals raising themselves above others in these groups because then that undermines the welfare of the group as a whole. And when you're living directly from your environment, taking resources to feed, clothe, and shelter yourself, right? That is a pretty direct existence, right? It is a fundamental life way, if you would. It's not to say it's not complicated. It's extremely complicated. Think about all the knowledge it takes to track an animal, or um, all the different plants that you need to know that you can eat, and when they're found, and where they're found, and yeah, what parts of them you can use. Like the knowledge and technology involved in a foraging lifeway is not simplistic at all. It is incredibly detailed. So never fall for the myth that foragers are primitive people. Nope. No difference between them and them, you and I. All right. The only difference is the technologies they're used. All right. Moving on. Pastoralism. This is using livestock as a primary subsistence basis. Uh, you may be you may herd goats, right? Or cattle or camels. Okay, these animals become your primary resource, and you tend not to actually some groups will not actually harvest the animals very frequently, as meat. They use byproducts from them. Uh, the Nuer in the Sudan, this is a great example. They're cattle people. They have tons of cattle. They actually they can tell you the elaborate history of all their cattle in their herd. Each one has a name and a genealogy, and they can tell you it. And social events that happened in relation to those cattle. Um, anyway, they use they don't tend to eat the cattle. They tend to use blood from it, milk them. Not things that you might think of. Every once in a while they do harvest one for meat, but that tends not to be the everyday practice. So yeah, pastoralists. Next group, or pattern, I should say, is horticulture. Horticulture is, think of it as small-scale gardening, but not gardening flowers, all right? This is about growing food, and it's very labor-intensive. It's all done with your hands. You do not use beasts of burden, all right? There's no ox plow in your field, okay? You do it. You have a digging stick. It is tough work. Where I used to live and work in West Africa, I have done my fair share of intensive horticulture. Wow, I've never had such blisters in my life. I'll tell you stories about that other time. Because I have other things I have to talk about. Let's see here, we got agriculture. Think of this as kind of a step up from horticulture. Agriculture is a larger scale. You tend to use beasts of burden, like an ox plow in your field, or a pair of mules or something like that. You also tend to modify the soil with fertilizers. I think I said it's already on a larger scale. We also have industrialization. Now, industrialization is using mechanized means of production, using machines. Okay, think Henry Ford and the Model A. Okay, he was cranking them out. Think of factories just cranking things out. Now take that same thought and think about food. We have GPS-linked combines that will harvest an entire crop in America's heartland. Right? I was born in Kansas, and they didn't have the GPS when I was a kid, but yeah, they had the giant combines. That's mechanization, and they would harvest 500 acres of wheat. It's important to look at these patterns and see that we see these general ways. Now, keep in mind, I think I already said this, that no individual pattern will be strict, right? There's always a little give, a little overflow, if you would. They're mixed slightly. Moving on here, I wanted to talk about some redistribution systems. Got a couple of great examples in here. And redistribution systems, put it in a nutshell, is where you have a central authority of some sort that collects surplus things together and then redistributes them. A good example in our own society is taxes. Okay, we all pay taxes. Well, if you work, you do. And all that goes to a central authority, the IRS. And that money, some of it anyway, gets redistributed in various ways, like public works programs, paving roads, education. You get the idea, right? It's being redistributed. Sometimes it's not so abstract, like our system tends to be. It's much more direct. There's two great examples that I give. One's called MOCA, and the other is called potlatch. Let me describe MOCA first. MOCA is found among some groups in Papua New Guinea, and this is where an individual will go around to all of his friends and neighbors and say, hey, give me a bunch of pigs and yams and money. What can you contribute to me so I can throw this special party and give it all away? All right? And something special happens when he gives it all away. He actually raises his social status in the community. He becomes a big man. This is an important thing to recognize, that economics speaks to so many other things. It's not strictly money. It speaks to an entire life way. Mocha is a good example of that. These groups raise pigs. Um, there's elaborate relationships between communities and pigs, and how pigs are distributed. And yams, man, it's mind blowing to say the least, right? Elaborate systems. But the important thing to recognize about Mocha is that this person gathers the surplus goods and redistributes them, and that this particular example, Mocha, increases that person's social status in the community. There's a video I've included in this week's announcement. Check it out. It's called Anka's Big Mocha, and this is it, man. I mean, this I think this one was done in the 80s, maybe earlier. It is an absolutely incredible documentary because you are up close and personal. Anka is the guy who's throwing the mocha, the big party that gives all the stuff away, and you get to see him go out and ask all of his friends and neighbors, "Hey, what are you going to contribute? When can I expect that?" And he's got to be diligent about it. He's kind of got to hound them, right? But that's culturally appropriate. That's what they're supposed to do. Another example that I share is potlatch. You find this among many indigenous groups in the Pacific Northwest of North America. Potlatch is very similar to Mocha in a lot of ways. In particular, an individual will gather together resources and he will give it away, and by doing so, it increases their social status. In the community, they're viewed as being, having special social value. People recognize their unique contributions, and they might come to you for certain things as a result of that. It took me a little digging, but I found a good documentary. It's actually part of a larger thing. Feel free to watch the larger video, but I got it linked in the written portion of this announcement. So two good examples about redistribution. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on is colonialism. This is a bit of a downer. It's harsh. It's important to recognize. There's an elaborate history associated with colonization. Everything from colonization of the New World, right, to the colonial era, which was it 1885? Berlin Conference. I may have the date wrong. I'm horrible with dates. But Berlin Conference kicks it off, and was it 12, 14 European powers and the U.S. Sit down at a conference and decide how they're going to divvy up parts of the world, predominantly Africa. And they wrote down rules about how they got to go about to do it. Now, this is an incredibly I could find some choice words to describe it. Egotistical, I think, would be mild. Conceited. To think that you have the right to go take over other parts of the world for your own ends. Wow. I mean, it is kind of the history of the world. Divide and conquer. But the formality of this was really mind-blowing. We tended to have two general styles of colonialism. We had direct rule and indirect rule. If I remember right, France, Belgium, Portugal, they really underscored direct rule. They would go in to communities in Africa and say, okay, we're in charge now. You're working for us. You will grow cotton, you'll grow peanuts, you have to pay taxes. And we're going to, by doing that, you can no longer produce your own foodstuffs because you have to produce for this colonial authority. And then you're subjected to their market economy on top of it. It is, the roots of colonialism are so pervasive. They're everywhere today. Before I forget, the other example, indirect rule. Is exemplified by the British. They would go in and use existing authorities essentially as a puppet. They would leave the ruler in place and directly, even though we call it indirect, they directly controlled the leader. But we call it indirect because they're using local systems. They're just controlling the head. Direct, French, France, and in Belgium, primary examples, they would actually go and remove local authorities and replace them with themselves. Okay. Where I used to live and work in West Africa, it was colonized by France. Even to this day, Malian currency is directly tied to the French franc. It is written into law that the Malian currency is only worth, was it, I think, a hundredth of what a French franc is, or a tenth, I forget. That's not important. But what is important, right, what the key thing here to recognize is that the currency today is still tied to the colonial authority, all right? I'm not sure if you all realize that stuff still exists. I mean, I'm glad if you do, but this class is to help, open your eyes to some of that stuff. Colonialism. I include, it's a preview to an incredible movie, documentary called King Leopold's Ghost. Definitely check out the preview. Trigger warning, it's pretty harsh, okay? You're not going to see pretty pictures. But it's also very real. It's very honest. It's very factual. It's historically accurate. But if you get the chance, watch. You have to pay for it, but or you might have access to it somewhere else. Totally watch the full movie. It is well worth it. To give you put it in a nutshell, King Leopold II of Belgium wanted to, well, for the Berlin Conference, he decided he wanted a piece of Africa, and he killed over 1 million people to do it, and that's a conservative estimate. It was all actually about the exploitation or using the local population to harvest rubber at the time. We now have synthetic rubber and can make mass quantities of it at our will. But back then, rubber was a natural product. It was tapped from trees. And so people were forced to go and produce, to collect X amount of rubber every day. They had quotas. And there are really atrocious stories about how if people didn't meet their quota, family members would be mutilated as an incentive. Horrible stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to get too off on it all there. But yeah, take time, check these resources out. Look at the specifics for this week's written assignments. We got discussion. We also have, I think, a short answer quiz this week. Or no. What do we have? I'm looking. Let's see here. Yeah, short answer quiz. Yeah, I had that right. So yeah, that's where I'll leave this. Sorry if I rambled on too much, but yeah, I look forward to your work. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns, I'm just a click away. Don't you hesitate to call me, set up a Skype meeting. I am here for whatever you need me for. If you want to go over examples in greater detail, I'm happy to do so. All right. Have a great one, y'all. Catch you next time.